Hey, this is Produce with Pamela.
No,
Wow.
it's not.
No, it's not. This is the Week in Review. Greg Johnson, our Director of Media Development. You covered a few things from the USDA this week. A few things as in a few $billion.
A few billion. Well, we're not talking about the food box program. That was renewed. Remember way back when they announced that they were canceling the food box program that was part of the Trump administration. I think it was like $5 billion spent over the course of 15 months or whatever. They said it's not going to be a replacement, more of a successor. So how big of contracts did they renew for the fourth quarter of this year? Would you believe all of $3.4 million? 3.4 million for less than half a million boxes. So,
$7.80 a box.
at that size, I wonder why they're even bothering, because some companies' contracts were so little. Like one company has a $300 box or 300 box contract for like $3,800. I mean, what is the point of this? I mean, clearly in the same week when they announced that they're increasing SNAP benefits, this, I guess it's good news in the fact that people who are food insecure, it's a huge boost. Like the total budget is, or I forget what the percent is.
I mean, it's 27%, I think was what it was. They're increasing it. They did studies and decided that the food costs have gone up that much, and they haven't really increased the allocation based on food costs in decades.
Right. Well, I guess it's a little bit of a trick in that Congress is supposed to approve spending, and what the Biden administration did was they changed the parameters of the Thrifty Foods Plan, which updated the numbers, and it probably did need updating. It was pretty old, and that led to over a 20% increase in the funding, which was in raw dollars over $20 billion a year. So that compares to $3 million in the food box program. So it is a big deal.
To be fair, the food box program was kind of a crisis management thing that wasn't supposed to be permanent. And also it was also because people weren't getting to the store. It was one of those drive up, throw it in your trunk things because everyone is too scared to go to the store. Things were limited, limited. Remember lining up to get into the store? That was kind of what was going on. And at the same time, SNAP is being accepted for online grocery at an exponential rate. So the accessibility of foods, and so this does not help where wholesalers, this does not help direct payments to farmers like the food box program was. So there's quite a few differences there, of course, but when you look at it like from a little farther away, it's feeding people who need it and improving a program that already works. And of course, retailers are thrilled about it.
Retailers always love this program because it means more money for them. The thing that I have never liked about this program is there are not enough restrictions on what you can buy, because if we're giving people who are food insecure money to get food, I want there to be restrictions on healthy food. And the USDA itself says more than a quarter of SNAP spending is done on the combination of sugary drinks, candy, and prepared foods. Those are not healthy foods. And if people are food insecure, that's one thing I really loved about the food box, is especially when it was all produce. It was healthy. Mm-hmm. And if people are hungry and can't get food, they should get good, healthy food. Instead, this gives them a bigger budget to have the option to buy bad food.
I will point out one small, and it's small compared to $20 billion, but one of my favorite programs, the nutrition incentive programs, also got a boost this week. A $69 million boost was added to the program for only produce stuff. This is Double Up Food Bucks. That's one of those programs that doubles your spending with SNAP if you are buying local produce with it. Back in the day when I first saw it, when the Fair Food Network was launching this program in the Detroit area, I went to a store, one of the first stores that had it in store, and it was an incredibly complicated process for stores to try to get the POS system to be able to read what, just the widgets and gizmos of it was too complicated, but now they've got it figured out. And this program is expanding rapidly. The other part of the grant was to produce prescription grants. So this is a huge grant that goes directly toward produce. So I was happy to see, and that's nutrition incentives for using your SNAP dollars on fruits and vegetables. And that's the way that they're going. They're not going a WIC route where they're restricting only to certain nutritious foods, possibly because there's just too much influence on behalf of sugary drinks and cookies and snacks and chips and all those people.
And retailers.
I mean, they make a fair amount of money, a margin on those items. So yeah, that's complicated to try to restrict what you can buy with your SNAP dollars. Because just think about what happened with the, like Lorelei DeSogra with United Fresh and the decade or more of her hounding the industry and Capitol Hill to try to get fruit and vegetable vouchers as part of WIC. Now take WIC money and make it into SNAP money and push that rock up the hill. They're not going to get very far.
No, I mean, there continues to be an enormous misalignment of what is in my plate, and half a plate is fruits and vegetables, and the US food budget on what they spend. I mean, it's so misaligned, it's ridiculous. It doesn't, you always believe what people do, not what they say. Well, the government is spending a lot of money on stuff that they're not saying the way you should be eating it. And the way you should be eating it is half your plate is fruits and vegetables. And that's not the way it's going. And you're right, that $69 million, that does go in the right direction. And we need billions more like that. Yeah. And unfortunately, that means less for some other groups. Well, tough.
Yeah, I know. And it's tough. And the produce industry, most of us in the produce industry would not be upset to see SNAP dollars restricted, but there's arguments on both sides of the political spectrum, because people on the super far left think it's hurting your dignity to restrict food, and basically, I don't know, preach to people and tell them what they can and cannot buy. And I don't agree with that. I mean, if you want to eat and you want to get money to eat, I think you should be eating what, the half your plate says you should be eating. Not a lot. Right.
I agree that is not dignified, but it's not your money. No one's saying you can't spend your own money on whatever you want.
That's true. I mean, you want cookies and crackers, you can go get your cookies and crackers, with your own cash. Oh, well, I mean, speaking of cash, though, we were talking about cash again this week in the controlled environment agriculture. We named like pretty much every big farm out there in the big deals in our talk of monies and mergers last week. And then, of course, Bright Farms drops a huge acquisition on us this week. But what I thought was very interesting about they were acquired by Cox Enterprises. And Cox Enterprises, you might know them because they own the Kelly Blue Book, no relation.
No relation, but also pretty useful.
Yeah, pretty useful. They have decided to do a sustainable business and technology investments, spending $1 billion on enterprises like Bright Farms. They've been involved with Bright Farms since 2018, so this wasn't a surprise. But again, Bright Farms actually just also acquired Leaf Farms in Loudon, New Hampshire, one of my favorite growers out there. I actually visited them right before they opened. So a lot of mergers and acquisitions in there. And it's kind of funny because I want to know, I mean, because we talked about this M&A stuff and all this venture capital going into CEA agriculture, and there's going to be winners and losers. And when an entity that is not directly related to agriculture goes into it. You think about the, investment firms that buy retailers and then flip them, basically, that maybe aren't related in grocery retail. To see an organization, and no bitterness involved here, but I used to work for a newspaper that was bought by Cox Enterprises. And my old position no longer is there. I had left before that, but the world comes full circle. So it'd be interesting to see what a non-agriculture company does as the owner of an agriculture company.
Well, we have seen some examples. For instance, when Campbell Soup bought Bolthouse, they unloaded it at a loss because it was more than they had in mind. And a lot of people, when they bought that, a lot of people said, welcome to the produce industry, Campbell Soup. And they didn't like it.
Yeah, funny story.
I don't know. Although this is different, these investments, I don't think anyone knows what the direction of this controlled atmosphere is going to be. I mean, the investments are huge and the potential really is there. I mean, one of the losers, of course, could be field grown. It also could be imports. If a lot of traditional ag has problems with labor, if you can do it more without labor in an indoor controlled environment, maybe the losers are just the people who don't want to work anyway in those jobs.
I mean, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I saw a lot of chatter back and forth about these acquisitions and just about controlled environment agriculture in general. And a few people did mention that they believe that field greens are going to be significantly less in as soon as 5 years from now. That CEA agriculture is going to take over a lot of that volume. It's funny that you mention the Bolthouse thing, because Campbell Soup found out that stocking cans of soup is not exactly like growing carrots. And one of the funnier quotes that we had this week was from Doug McMillan, the CEO of Walmart, credited their Produce 2.0 program in the Q2 earnings report this week, as they did a great job of laying a good foundation in produce. So when the pandemic hit, they were prepared to keep it full and fresh. And he said something like, stocking cornflakes isn't like stocking produce and fresh and things like that. And of course, every produce person out there obviously knows, duh, it's a lot harder to stock produce. But I think through the pandemic, the fresh produce industry didn't really get hit as hard on the supply chain gaps. Maybe at the very, very first, when we're trying to unload actually excess volume into retail from food service. But one of the shining stars at retail over the last 18 months has been fresh produce. We've seen very smooth supplies with only our usual seasonal issues, and even all of those fears that we had of growers pulling back on supplies and maybe not planting because they're worried about food service demand. We didn't really see a whole lot of challenges as far as labor goes. The only challenges we've seen is just exceptional weather, but that's nothing new for produce.
Yeah, someone's getting hammered everywhere at some point.
Yeah, I mean, didn't we see burnt lettuce this week or something like that? And strawberries have been up and down all summer long with heat and then too cold. And I mean, that's just it's old news almost, unless it's a really severe issue. So, I mean, welcome to agriculture. But maybe the controlled environment thing will smooth some of that out and take out some of that market uncertainty. Don't know.
Maybe. I don't think we're going to stop covering it. And I don't think the news is going to stop either.
No, definitely not. But it's stopping now, because that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.